Welcome to the Parenting Puzzle Podcast with Dr. Daniela Owen, the podcast where we attempt to solve the parenting puzzle together.
Hey everybody, welcome into another edition of the Parenting Puzzle Podcast with Dr. Daniela Owen. How you doing today, Dr. D?
I'm doing well, Jake. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Did you have a good weekend?
I did. We had a very festive weekend around here, so that was really nice. We're kind of in the throes of family birthday time, so we've been doing a lot of celebrating. How's your ceiling doing, dare I ask?
We're making progress. We're gonna hang the sheetrock ourselves, and then hire somebody to like paint it and finish it and all that stuff. Okay. The insurance is not paying for it because I don't know why really. They don't handle squirrels. But we're gonna take care of it. It's we're gonna find a way to not make it that expensive, but it's still, not what you want to be paying for. But
yeah,
we'll figure it out. It's a good start to the week. So like, it's basically summertime. My 3-year-old Jackson, he had his like little graduation thing from his 3-year-old school this morning, so that was really nice. And this is my 9-year-old's last week of school. I don't know if y'all going through that right now too.
We're in the last week of school ourselves over here. Yep.
Really? That's crazy. You're in Florida in the East. I'm in Louisiana, and it still finishes the school at the same time. Look at that. That's kind of cool. So we wanted to get together and have an episode related to summer, right? It's like we're about to get into we're transitioning into a new season very, very soon. Probably when this podcast comes out, Dr. D, it's going to be summertime or something close to it. And kids have a lot more free time on their hands because they're not in school for however many hours in the day. And parents are trying to figure out what should we do with these kids so they're not just twiddling their thumbs for 7 hours a day. So I know you had some thoughts on how you can make it a summer where you're not just like on a screen all day or all that kind of stuff like that. So I'll turn it over to you and we could talk through like strategies of how to make it a less phone heavy summer.
Sounds great, Jake. Yeah, I totally agree. Whether people's summers are starting this week or in 3 or 4 weeks in the Northeast, it's coming. Summer's around the corner. And, Jessica was on the last episode asking about how to manage not having, delaying tech, specifically phones for kids going into middle school. It was a great question. And it really got me thinking, summer is coming up and it's so easy for everyone to rely on screens for entertainment. And there's a good reason for that, right? They are what I call low barrier to entry activities. You press power on an app, you press a button, like it's so quick and the entertainment starts, right? And there's endless content on sites like YouTube and, streaming apps like Netflix. There's so much content that it can keep kids entertained for extended periods, which is desirable to the kids, a lot of times desirable to the parents, but it comes at a cost, right? So all of that low barrier to entry entertainment tends to also be quite passive, meaning we're just consuming. We're not interacting with it. We're not really doing that much. We're not working our brains. We're not thinking. We're not developing our motor skills. So it's not great for us to be doing for such extended periods, especially for kids whose brains are still developing, right? And so that's, that's what I'm always thinking about. How is this affecting kids and how is it impacting families? And how do we get that balance? Was what are some ways that families can avoid getting into the trap of endless hours of screens all summer long? So the first thing for families to be thinking about is doing a little bit of prep work. And most families don't mind doing this, but we just, it's kind of a blur at the end of the school year. Before you know it, it's summer. And then it's like, we got to entertain these kids, right? So taking some time this coming weekend, the weekend after, depending on when school ends, and thinking through with kids what kinds of things they would like to do over the summer. And this can lead to creating something that I love to create with kids, which is a menu of activities, right? You think about a menu, you go to a restaurant and you think that, oh, that looks good. Oh, I think I'll try that, right? Asking a kid who's bored to come up with something to do is very difficult. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, Jake, but when I go out to eat somewhere and I'm like too hungry, I look at the menu and I'm like, I don't know what to do. You ever have that happen? You're like too hungry. It's like you're too, and if kids are too bored and you ask them, what are you gonna do? They're like, I don't know. And so, or I guess what I should say is when someone asks you, what do you want to eat? And you're too hungry, you don't know. But then you look at a menu and you're like, oh, wait, I could have that. That sounds good. That sounds good. It's the same principle. So you create this menu ahead of time when kids are not bored, when they're in their creative open mind state, and you get all kinds of different things on there. It's going to look different for different kids. It can be outdoor activities, indoor activities. It could be crafty kinds of things, sciencey sorts of things. It could be things that are on tech, but maybe coding or playing a creative game where they have to think and interact. Chess, even on the computer, right? And then they've got this menu that's at their disposal. So when things get boring, you just look at the menu and you have ideas of what you have available to you right there. And so instead of having to come up with something original when your brain is in a state already bored and your kind of tolerance for thinking is lower, you've already done the work for yourself at another time. So that's one great tip.
I like that.
You like that? Okay, good.
Yeah.
And to fill that out, I really encourage families to do a little bit of either planning or shopping. So if you've got a kid who is really creative or your family's on a budget, you just got to think outside the box of what kinds of things you can do with what you've got and create new things. You know, I've seen kids like create boats out of just supplies that they have in their house that they can then go bring to whatever body of water, a little pond or lake or the ocean or a backyard swimming pool, and kind of do some like boat races or things like that. So you don't really have to spend a lot. It just takes a little bit more energy and effort. This goes back to what I was saying before. You press on and the screen goes on, low barrier to entry. Having to build something creative, higher barrier to entry. But if you think it through in advance and you spend the time to gather the things together, then the barrier to entry goes down and it makes it more doable to do that activity. Same thing with crafts, right? So just either getting some craft kits or getting some individual craft items and putting them together in kits for kids. So if you say, hey, I know you've been interested in making bracelets. Why don't we get that little bracelet box out that we made? You could take a shoebox and put all of the different supplies in there. But if your kid has to now start looking for the beads and the string and the scissors and the this, they might be like, I don't want to spend all that time and energy. If you come together, you can even have your child do it. But when they're not frustrated and bored already, but when they're kind of into the idea, put it together in a shoebox or a Ziploc bag or something, put it in a place where they can access it. And then when they're bored, look at the menu. Oh, I've been wanting to make some beaded bracelets for me and my friends. They know where to go, get the kit, and they can start working on it. And so what you've effectively done as a family is you have lowered the barrier to entry on activities that sometimes are more effortful to get set up or started. And when you make it easier to get started, you increase the chance of the child doing that activity. And so creating that menu of activities and then getting everything ready to do them, that really increases the chance of kids doing other activities aside from tech in the summer.
So basically what you're saying is like it's a two-step process so far, right, Dr. D? Mm-hmm. First step is like, because I get what you're saying. It's like if you go to this, like let's say one of the kids, let's say they earned like, maybe they got like A/B honor roll or A honor roll, or they did something awesome. and there's like, you want to give them a reward. So you're like, hey, we're going to go to the store. You got a budget of $20 and you're going to be able to pick out anything you want. It's going to take that kid forever to pick out a toy or whatever they want. Because you like, they have so many options. But it's like this, that same conceptually, you'd be like, hey, here's 4 different potential things you could pick. Then they pick one much quicker. So I like the menu idea. And so, but you're basically saying too, though, is do you select, like, you put things on a menu that you think your kid will like based specifically on that kid. So every menu is going to be different, right?
Right. And I would encourage families to make it with the kids involved.
Yeah.
So they are saying, well, I like this and I like that and I like this and I like that. So I'd be willing to do those things.
Yeah. And then you have, once you identify the menu items, right? Then you say as a parent, okay, what can I do to make sure when we come up with the idea, hey, let's do this. Now the barrier of entry is low because the stuff's already there. So the first step is create the menu. Here's my 9-year-old kid menu. Okay. And then you got to get the ingredients to cook it.
Right.
Right. Because what's the point of having something on the menu if you can't eat it?
That's right.
Because especially when you're hungry, like you were talking about, you want to eat the food. Right. So that makes a lot of sense. Because I think kids, especially, even me, I'm like a big kid, but like kids, especially, they get bored really, really quick. Really quick. So like I'm bored, and then the low barrier of entry for the parents at that point is, okay, yeah, go ahead and like watch YouTube or play your VR or play on your iPad. And not saying you can't do that sometimes, right? And I guess that's but you can't, but maybe there's an other option if you already have the menu. I guess I'm curious, like, what do you think, like, during the summer, they're not in school, there's a lot more free time. Maybe you can't afford as a parent to send them to like every summer camp in the sun, because those are not cheap. Like, what is like a appropriate amount of time a kid should be on screens during the summer, any kind of screen?
That's a great question. So the American Pediatric Association has gotten away from saying how long kids should be on screens and more talking about what they're doing on screens, right? So 3 hours on a screen playing an interactive or educational game or even playing chess against the computer is very different from 3 hours of watching videos where they're completely passive. So doing things that are active, doing things that if you're using it together, or 2 kids are using a device together and doing something interactive, it's a very different experience for that child and for their brain compared to just passively consuming media, right? And so, even these days we have, iReaders and books, and you could read things on, older kids might be reading on their devices and stuff. And so it's not about how long, it's about what they're doing. Passive, when kids are just consuming passive content, it's really causing them to just kind of zone out. And we don't want kids to zone out for very long periods of time, right? So, zoning out for over an hour, I would say, is probably not great. But if they're mixing it up and doing a little bit of shows and then playing a game and then, I don't know, doing a FaceTime with a friend and then, getting back and doing an art thing on their screen and then going back to watching something a little, mixing it up, that's more what we're looking for. So it's less about how long they're using devices for, and it's more about what they're using devices for. However, I'm a little old school, and I think that taking a break from looking at screens is good for eyes. I haven't verified this with an optometrist, but I'm sure optometrists would agree with me. If we're always looking at a screen for so many hours on end, it's not great for our eyes. And so being able to switch and make the friendship bracelets by hand, and then getting back on and doing some kind of puzzle thing, and then getting off and doing, some kind of running around, physically active, that's the other thing. When they're on screens, they're not physically active for the most part. And so being able to move your body, so important for kids. built into the school day, not built into the summer day, perhaps, if they're not, to your point, at a camp where they're doing a lot of physically active things. So if families live in a neighborhood where kids get on their bikes in the morning and play all day and then come back in the evening, that's great. But a lot of families don't have that situation. And so if that's not the case for your family, thinking through, which can be physically active activities, but thinking through what kids can be doing with their time. And this is a fun thing for kids to do. Most of the time when you ask a kid to make a menu of activities, they're like, oh, they can get pretty creative with it. And so they can think through, like what are the appetizer kind of activities, something that's quicker and shorter, easier maybe. What are the kind of bigger things? They could have physically active things on there. They could have creative things on there. They could have screen time things on there, right? They can break it up into different sections. And that way they're thinking through in advance things that they would want to do, so that when it comes time to do things, they can look at it. And to your point, it's already narrowed down. And I know we have a number of parents who listen to or watch our podcast of neurodivergent kids. Having to pick, to your point, walking into the toy store and having to pick from everything is overwhelming. But narrowing it down to a handful of good choices, that can be much more manageable and feel a lot more doable for kids and families. So thinking through what those things are, just making sure they're reasonable, right? So if your kids got something on there that they're not allowed to do, or you're not able to provide them with the supplies for, that shouldn't be on the menu. It should be things that they can do, that they're able to do, ideally that they're able to do independently. And so these are things that kids can just get started on working on their own.
That makes sense too, like making sure the menu is actually attainable.
Exactly.
Yeah, if we can't afford it or it's not possible, that's why it's got to be like collaborative. That makes a lot of sense. That way it's like, hey, okay, let's, instead of get on your phone, let's pick something from the menu that you could work on today. Boom, there it is. All right, here's your supplies. Let's work on it. Or you work on it, even better, because that's a challenge for parents, and why kids end up on the phone a lot is because the summer's different for the kid because they're not in school anymore. But like parents, the work's kind of the same. Yeah. It's just maybe a little bit hotter. So it's great points. So Dr. D, I think I'm ready for my favorite segment. What do you think?
Okay, let's do it.
All right. Let me just bring this up. I'm ready to roll. All right. We want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor for the last word with Dr. D, Louisiana Flag Football. Speaking of kids being active, we're talking about that a little about today, trying to get them off the screens. If you're looking for a safe, fun, competitive way to get your kids off the screens and doing something active and fun, Isaac and I both participate in this league, me as a coach and Isaac as a player. I would go check out Louisiana Flag Football. They're definitely going to be having some kind of program coming up soon. We're in the middle of the spring season right now, but if you're looking for a way for your kids to have fun, be active, go check out their website, louisianaflagfootball.com. They're the biggest flag football organization in Louisiana right now, and we would highly recommend it. And thank you so much to Louisiana Flag Football for supporting the parenting puzzle. We greatly appreciate it. Okay, let me play this other little thing, and then we'll do this. Got to find it. Here we go. I found it. Oh, my God. Sorry.
Okay, so the last word today is we're coming up on summer, for some of us sooner than later, and having kids be free initially feels really exciting and then pretty quickly turns to boredom. So unless you have your kids in endless activities for the whole summer, chances are they're going to have quite a bit of free time. And free time tends to lead to wanting to use screens. As we mentioned, it's a low barrier to entry activity, really easy to get started, really easy to stay on. However, just consuming passive content all summer is not going to be great for your kids. And so what I want to suggest is thinking this through in advance. doing a little brainstorming session with your child and coming up with the different activities that are available to them, and then having them create a menu of these activities so that they can see what's available to them. Then when they're feeling bored during the summer, they can get out their menu, look at what the choices are, and pick something from the menu. And the second part of this is making sure that everything that's on their menu is available to them. So as Jake pointed out, you can't put something on the menu if you don't have the food at the restaurant, right? And so got to make sure if they're putting crafts on there, you have the supplies to do those crafts. If they're putting physical activities on there, you got to make sure they've got all the parts that they need to be able to do that. If they want to build stuff, make sure you've got those kinds of things, and put them together or encourage your child to put them together in a way that's easy to access. That will make it easier to get started with those activities, bring down the barrier to entry on more involved activities, and really help them do those other things, which will create a much more interesting, fun, creative, and engaged summer for your kids. And as parents, I'm pretty sure you're going to be pretty happy about that as well. So give it a try.
Yeah, like keep the activity of learning going.
Yeah.
We don't need to stop learning, right, Dr. D?
No, and they can just learn in different ways. And playing is learning, and it's fun.
Yeah, love it. So, okay, I got to say this every time because
Please
I think
do.
Dr. D's the best. So, subscribe if you are enjoying this content. Maybe you're taking something away, like creating your own little menu and serving those dishes out hot during the summer. Like the podcast, share the podcast, subscribe, send it out to a friend. Put a question in the comments. We'd love to get some more people on the podcast. We want to continue to put this good content out there. I want to continue to convince Dr. D to do it. So thank you guys for listening. Dr. D, have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please consider subscribing and leaving us a review. It really helps us out and lets others discover the show.